Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray, a very good afternoon to you. Where have you been, my dear boy?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I don't really know where I've been, really. I've been covering American politics a fair bit.
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll definitely talk about that. But I want to ask you, so your new boss is Michael Gove?
Indeed he is. Yeah, very exciting times.
Look at you. Very exciting. They didn't give me the job. I can't believe it. Gove, when does he start?
The end of this week, Friday.
Really?
Yeah.
And so you'll be his deputy. So you can give us... You're going to be... Is he going to allow you to do this anymore? Is he going to change the way what happens there at The Spectator?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously this will never happen, but maybe I should go into politics. We can swap places.
That would be very interesting. He ain't going back. Freddie, so much to talk about. We will talk about the United States. We'll talk about that escalating situation in the Middle East. The Tory party leadership debate is hardly the most exciting thing in my life, but I was moved by a comment from Benedict Spence an hour ago on this station. I'd love your response to it. He said, and I quote, Jenrick, who is, in most people's mind, leading this race, Badenoch, I think, has sort of, in most people's minds, has yes, come out, culture wars, arguments, could start an argument with herself in a phone box, but it's about serious leadership. He said, I can't have Jenrick. This is a one-nation Tory wet who's redefined himself to the right simply on the basis of going to the Home Office. Now, many people are saying, well, that happens to you when you go to the Home Office, to be fair. Is Jenrick the future or not?
I think not. I think he's a kind of stalking horse for the Badenoch team. They really don't like him, and I think they think they'll beat him.
Do you think Badenoch will beat him?
I do. I think. I mean, I like everything Jenrick's saying. I think he's run a pretty good campaign. I'm not sure he's the right vehicle. I think you could paint him as a chameleon, but politicians being chameleons, surprise, surprise.
Yes.
I think no. I think Badenoch is most likely to win, and I think if you polls.
What do you think of the criticism of her that yes, she's she fights for the things. She's anti-woke. She fights for things that matter to a lot of people. But and one of the things I thought about Sunak, and Peter Carbon and I disagreed violently about this at the time. I'm not sure you can be the leader within 7 years. Is she experienced enough? Many people have told me that in the departmental role, not very good at delegating, quite argumentative the whole time. Is that nothing against her, but is that the right person? I'm not saying Jenrick is. I fear, no, I don't care actually. Why did I use the word fear? I think they'll blow each other up and somebody will come straight through the middle like Cleverly. That's what I think the Tories always go back to.
Well, Kemi used to work at The Spectator, and I can vouch for the fact that she's pretty good at getting into arguments. I think she is. She's combative, which is a strength and a weakness. I think people who like her think of her as tough and robust and willing to say what she thinks. People who don't like her think she's a nightmare to work with. And I think there's a lot of people in government who are briefing out that she has been a nightmare to work with. So, I mean, we have to wait and see. I think generally, if you look at the crop of Tory talent, the fact that Kemi is at the very top says rather a lot about the dire straits the party is in.
I think that's quite an interesting one. But actually also, if you look at what's going on with the wider picture of the Labour Party, I remember when this whole thing started, and I remember thinking to myself, you need to get a leader elected, you need to get yourselves together. But the Labour Party seems to be doing a pretty good job of blowing itself up, irrespective of there being a Tory leadership leadership there to take them down. They seem to be destroying themselves on a daily basis, don't they?
Well, one can only pity the British public. We have got rid of a government that was failing manifestly on almost every level and replaced it with a government that seems already to be failing even more dramatically on every level, plus a few others.
I haven't been able to speak to you about this. I haven't spoken to you for a while. Are you amazed? I'm absolutely flabbergasted by the optics. I'm flabbergasted by some of the decisions. I'm flabbergasted by this sort of refusal to understand or even comprehend that your average male and female working Briton is looking at the Labour Party going, God, your noses are in the trough, you're worse. I can't even believe that anybody is allowing this to happen.
Well, yes, and the lack of scrutiny, not on this channel, but the lack of scrutiny generally in many parts of the media towards Keir Starmer and the front bench until they're in government was staggering. There was a kind of the Ming Vase approach of the Labour campaign to have this sort of very defensive, cautious electoral strategy. The extraordinary thing about that was how willing a lot of the media were to go along with it. Let's just not talk about the reality of this party. Let's just get the Tories out.
Yeah.
When that finally happens, and they are scrutinised, and they're failing dramatically and terribly. It's all pretty awful.
I mean, if you know, deputy editor of The Spectator, can you think in your political time of a government that started so badly? You think about the pensioners thing, which is, I just, you know, they say to me, oh, it'll be gone. I think that will be their poll tax moment. I don't think that Starmer and his government will ever be forgiven for that particular thing. You think about today, we find out that these, you know, let's release some prisoners. Just forget the victims. We'll release you to your Gucci trainers and your cars. Oh, you're reoffending because you don't want to be homeless. You're back in prison. I mean, the look is just, all of it is beyond me. And to be aware that you can win by saying nothing is one thing, but to have, in my mind, absolutely no plan in place. None whatsoever. I gave this analogy out from a film I watched some time ago, and it said that the way to win an election is to gather together a bunch of disillusioned, disenchanted people, tell them what's wrong with their lives and tell them who's to blame for that. You don't necessarily, in opposition, if a government is that incompetent, need to say anything. They've got there. I don't believe there's any bleeding plan at all, man.
No, I don't think there has been as speedy a collapse in terms of, you look at the polling, you look at Keir Starmer's popularity. I don't think there has been anything quite that rapid. And the most extraordinary thing about it, I think, is this week, looking at the Tory party conference, people are almost nostalgic. And it's not just Tories. There are some people increasingly nostalgic for the semi-apocalyptic disaster of Rishi Sunak.
No.
And the economy, is suddenly looking as though the Tories, maybe they did know what they were doing.
Well, you see, here's the really interesting thing. That, to me, absolutely symbolises how far the British public had stopped listening to the Tory party, because there is no doubt that the economy was beginning to change. But I think they got stuck, like so many politicians, I think, and political parties get stuck. And the leadership is an example of this, Freddie. Should we be saying this? Should we be saying that? Should we appear... The people in this country, right, this is a nailed-on fact, this is not far-right politics, who pay their taxes and don't break the laws and have never, ever asked for jack, are increasingly hacked off, in brackets, they're not far-right, close brackets, with this country seemingly giving what little it's got to people who don't deserve it, or who should not actually be in front of pensioners or hard-working class people in the queue. And if you, under Starmer, if you disagree with that, you're a far right. No, you're not. There's a lot of disillusionment. And I think that understanding that as a politician is severely lacking. And I said yesterday on the show, I'd love your take on this. You know, I mean, for me, it needs a conviction politician who's not scared to upset either side of the Tory party, who believes in this needs to be done and I'm bloody well going to do it. And you either come with me like Thatcher, like Blair, who dragged the Labour Party up by its bootstraps to get elected. Either you come with me or you're out. Simple as that. That's what it needs.
Well, yeah, I think that's why you saw both Jenrick and Badenoch sort of trying to claim Thatcher's mantle today, that they are the conviction politician. I think that's a tough sell. I think the public are aware of the fact that they have leaders that they can't trust and alternatives that they don't trust, or perhaps it's the other way around. The major parties in this country have survived in ways that they haven't in Europe. If you look at France or something like that. I think, you look at Reform now, they are growing in popularity. I don't know if they have what it takes to emerge as a credible rival to the Tory party and Labour or Labour. I think they might, but we'll have to wait and see. It's important for them that they make very big, important strategic decisions in the future. But what certainly seems true is that the established major parties have never looked quite so hollow